Step with me into Ravenna. The year is 476. The city is quiet. Too quiet for the capital of the Roman West. But then Ravenna has been the capital for a while now, because Rome itself, the old city, is no longer safe enough to hold an emperor. That should tell you something already. But hold onto it. Inside the palace, a boy is being told that he is finished. His name is Romulus. They call him Augustulus, Little Augustus, a nickname that is half a joke. He is perhaps 16 years old. He carries two of the greatest names in Roman history, Romulus, the founder of the city, Augustus, the founder of the empire, and he rules almost nothing at all. His father put him on the throne barely a year ago. Now a soldier named Odoacer, a commander of the Germanic troops who make up what is left of the Roman army, has decided the charade is over. There is no battle. There is no massacre. No burning, no last stand on the palace steps. The boy is simply told to take off the purple. He is given a pension, a comfortable estate in the south, a quiet income, a life. And he vanishes from history so completely that we do not even know for certain when he died. Odoacer does not even take the title of emperor for the West. He sends the imperial regalia, the crown, the robe, east to Constantinople, and says in effect, the West does not need an emperor anymore. And that is it. That is the moment. The one in every textbook. The fall of the Roman Empire. The end of the ancient world. 1500 years of and then, in 476, Rome fell. Look at it again. A teenager pensioned off. A shrug. A package mailed east. Almost nothing happened here. So if this is the day Rome died, why does it feel like nobody in the room even noticed? Here is the truth the date hides. An empire does not fall in an afternoon. It does not die because one boy takes off a robe. Empires are enormous, ancient, deeply rooted things, and they do not simply stop. Not in a single year, not on a single date you can underline in a book. So when we say Rome fell in 476, we are doing something strange. We are pointing at the funeral and calling it the murder. Because the Roman Empire in 476 was already a corpse. It had been dying for 100 years. The body was cold long before that boy was ever born. What happened in Ravenna was not the death. It was the paperwork. The real death, the actual wound, the moment the thing that made Rome was destroyed and could never be rebuilt, happened almost a century earlier, on a hot August afternoon. On a field most people have never heard of. That is where we are going. Not to the funeral in 476, to the killing in 378. And to understand it, you have to understand what an empire actually is, and what you have to destroy to end one. If you want history told the way it actually happened, not the tidy dates but the real slow catastrophe underneath them, subscribe and walk with us. We follow these stories all the way down. Let's stay in 476 for a moment longer, because we need to be clear about how little it meant to the people living through it. Start with the emperors. You might imagine that Romulus Augustulus was the last in a long, stable line, that his fall broke a chain that had held for centuries. He was not. In the 21 years before him, the Western throne had been a revolving door. 9 different men had worn the purple and lost it since the year 455. Emperors were being made and unmade by their own generals so often that the title had become almost meaningless. Romulus was simply the last spin of a wheel that had been spinning for a generation. Now look at what Odoacer actually did after taking power. If this were the death of Rome, you would expect Rome to end. It did not. Odoacer kept the Roman Senate, that ancient body kept meeting in the city, just as it had for nearly 1,000 years. Latin remained the language of law and administration. Roman law still governed daily life. The great landowners were still rich. They had lost estates, yes, but they were still there, still Roman, still running their world in Roman ways. To the people of Italy, 476 did not feel like the end of civilization. It felt like another coup in a century that had seen dozens. One more Germanic general taking control of a government that Germanic generals had been controlling for decades already. The idea that 476 was the date, the hinge of all history, came later. It was sharpened by writers looking back, and it became politically useful. A generation after Odoacer, the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian would launch a devastating war to restore the Western Empire, and it helped enormously to be able to say that the West had fallen, that there was a wrong to be righted, a lost empire to be reclaimed. A clean date makes a clean justification. Rome fell in 476 is partly history, and partly a slogan for a war fought decades after. So set the date down. It is a bookmark someone slipped into the story long after the fact. The question remains. If the empire was already dead by 476, when did it actually die? To answer that, you have to know what to look for. What is an empire, really? Not the marble. Not the emperor. Not even the city. Rome had been sacked and survived, lost emperors and survived, burned and survived. Those things could be replaced. There was only one thing Rome could not do without. One thing that made all the rest possible: the taxes, the roads, the law, the peace. The army. For centuries, the Roman army was not just strong. It was a system, a machine for turning farmers and provincials into disciplined legions, and then when those legions bled, for replacing them. That was the real secret. Rome lost battles all the time. Rome lost whole armies, to Hannibal at Cannae, to the Parthians at Carrhae, and every time it reached back into its vast reserves of manpower and loyalty and built another one. The ability to absorb a catastrophe and regenerate, that was the empire. That was the thing. Destroy an army and Rome shrugs. Destroy the ability to rebuild the army, and you have killed the empire, even if it takes a century for the body to fall. So to find the death of Rome, we are not looking for the last emperor. We are looking for the last army, the one that was destroyed and never replaced. For that, we have to leave Italy. We have to go to the cold northern frontier, to the great river that marked the edge of the Roman world, the Danube, and we have to go back from 476, almost exactly 100 years, to the year 376, because something arrives at that river in 376, something Rome has never faced before, not an invading army, a refugee crisis. Stand on the northern bank of the Danube in the year 376 and look out across the water. The far shore is crowded with people, not soldiers in ranks, families, tens of thousands of them. By some accounts, as many as 200,000 souls, men, women, children, the old, the sick, everything they own piled on carts and backs. They are the Goths, and they are terrified, because behind them, out of the east, has come something that terrifies even them. The Huns, mounted merciless, driving whole peoples before them like cattle. The Goths are not at the river to conquer Rome. They are at the river to escape. They are asking desperately to be let in, to cross into the empire and be given land and safety, and in return they will do what countless barbarians had done before: serve, farm, and fight in Rome's armies. And this could have worked. Rome had absorbed newcomers for centuries. It was in its way one of the things Rome did best: take outsiders, settle them, and slowly make them Roman. Handled well, 200,000 Goths were not a threat. They were a gift. New farmers, new soldiers, new strength for a frontier that always needed more men. The emperor in the east, Valens, allowed them to cross. And then Rome did the thing that killed it. The Roman officials on the frontier, the men responsible for feeding and settling this desperate mass of people, saw not a crisis to be managed, but an opportunity to be exploited. The Goths were starving. The promised provisions never came, or came rotten, or came at a price. And the price was monstrous. Roman commanders sold them dog meat at the cost of their children, one dog for one child to be taken into slavery. Parents handed over their sons and daughters to be enslaved, just to keep the rest of the family alive one more week. Think about what that does to a people. They came asking for refuge. They were starved, cheated, and made to sell their children. And they were, remember, not a broken tribe. They were tens of thousands of armed, capable fighting men, now watching their families degraded and dying, with the Danube at their backs and nowhere left to run. This was not chaos. This was policy. Cruel, short-sighted, bureaucratic policy. The decisions of men who saw the desperate and thought only of what could be squeezed from them. The Goths did what any people would do. They rose. And for 2 years they burned their way across the Balkans, and no Roman force could stop them. Until at last the emperor himself came north to end it, with the field army of the Eastern Roman Empire at his back. His name was Valens, and he was about to make the worst decision in Roman military history. The 9th of August, 378, near the city of Adrianople, in what is now the border country of Turkey and Bulgaria. It is brutally hot. Valens has marched his army out from the city that morning. He has perhaps 15,000 men, the professional corps of the Eastern Field Army, the real thing, disciplined and equipped, the instrument on which the whole empire depends. Somewhere ahead, the Goths are camped behind a great circle of wagons, their families and their plunder inside the ring. Valens has a choice to make, and it will decide everything. His nephew, the Western Emperor Gratian, is marching to join him with a second army. Wait a few days, combine the forces, and the Goths face overwhelming odds. Every sensible voice tells him to wait. But Valens does not want to share the victory. He is jealous of his brilliant young nephew. He has been told, by scouts who counted wrong, that the Goths are fewer than they are. And it is so hot and his men are so eager and the enemy is right there. He attacks. And almost at once it goes wrong. The Romans advance on the wagon circle in the killing heat, and the fighting is close and confused and exhausting. And then, out of the countryside, the piece Valens did not account for comes thundering back. The Gothic cavalry, thousands of horsemen who had been away foraging, returning at the worst possible moment, crashing into the Roman flank. The Roman line, already engaged, already tired, is caught. And here the thing that made Rome great becomes the thing that destroys it. The legions fought in tight, disciplined formation, shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield. It was their strength. But a formation that tight, hit hard from the side and pressed from the front, has nowhere to go. The men are packed so close they cannot raise their arms. They cannot swing. They cannot run. The discipline that won 1,000 battles becomes a trap. Thousands of soldiers crushed together so tightly that many die on their feet, unable even to lift a sword. It is not a battle anymore. It is a slaughter, and it goes on until the sun goes down. When it is over, 2/3 of the Eastern Field Army is dead on that field. Not captured. Not scattered. Dead. 10,000 men and more, a loss the Romans themselves compared to Cannae, to the darkest day Hannibal ever gave them. And the emperor. Valens is somewhere in that collapse, and he never comes out of it. The stories say he was struck by an arrow and carried, wounded, into a small farmhouse, and that the Goths, not knowing who was inside, set the building alight, and the Emperor of Rome burned to death in a peasant's hut, anonymous, in the dark. His body was never found. The Roman Empire lost an emperor so completely that there was not even a corpse to bury. This is where Rome died. Not because one battle was lost, Rome had lost battles before, but because of what was lost and what happened next. The professional field army of the East was gone in an afternoon. And this time, this is the whole point, this time Rome could not simply build another one. The old machine, the one that turned catastrophe into a new army every time, was already breaking down. The manpower, the loyalty, the deep reserves, they were running dry. After Adrianople, Rome could no longer replace what it lost. It had to patch the hole with the only thing available, more barbarians. More Goths, hired as soldiers, settled inside the borders, fighting for Rome under their own chiefs, loyal to Rome only as long as it paid and only as long as it was strong. The empire did not fall at Adrianople, but it received the wound it would bleed out from. From this day, Rome is living on borrowed time, defended increasingly by the very peoples it could no longer defeat. The corpse just did not know it was a corpse yet. Watch how fast the blood runs once the wound is open. Within a generation, a Gothic king named Alaric, a man who had himself once served in Rome's armies, who had fought for the empire and been denied the rank and the payment he was promised, leads his people through Italy itself. Not raiding the frontier. Marching on the city. On Rome. And on the 24th of August, in the year 410, the impossible happens. Rome falls. For 3 days, the Visigoths sack the city. The eternal city, the heart of the ancient world, the city that had not seen a foreign enemy inside its walls in nearly 800 years. Not since Hannibal's era, not in living memory or the memory of anyone's grandparents, is looted, house by house. Understand what this meant to the people of the age. Rome was not just a city. Rome was the idea that some things do not fall. It was the fixed point, the eternal thing, the center that had always held. There were people alive in 410, whose entire understanding of the world rested on the simple fact that Rome endures. And then it didn't. The shock ran through the whole Mediterranean world. Far away in North Africa, a bishop named Augustine heard the news and was so shaken that he began to write a book to make sense of it, a book about how an eternal city could fall, and where, if not in Rome, permanence could truly be found. Men felt as if the sky itself had cracked. But notice, this is the sack of 410, and the fall of Rome in your textbook is 476. 66 years apart. Rome was sacked and shocked, and it still limped on for 2 more generations. That is how long the corpse kept walking. Stay with me a moment here in the ashes of 410, because this is the shape of the whole story. Not one death, but a long series of them, each one making the next one possible. If you want to support work like this, the full timelines, the maps of the collapse, the deep dives the videos can't always hold, the membership link is in the description. It keeps these stories being told properly. Now, the next wound. There is one more blow, and in some ways it is the quietest and the most fatal. An empire runs on bread. The Western Roman Empire, and the city of Rome above all, did not feed itself. It was fed for centuries by the grain of North Africa. The rich provinces around Carthage, on the coast of what is now Tunisia, were the breadbasket of the West. Ships crossed the Mediterranean in great fleets, carrying the wheat that kept Rome alive. Africa was the one province that had stayed rich, stayed safe, stayed Roman, while Gaul and Spain and Britain slipped away. And in the year 429, another people, the Vandals, crossed from Spain into North Africa. Within 10 years, in 439, they took Carthage itself. And the bread stopped. This is the death that does not look like a battle. No emperor falls in a burning farmhouse. But the Western Empire has just lost its richest province, its tax base, and its food supply all at once. The government in Italy could no longer pay its soldiers, could no longer feed its capital, could no longer fund the armies it needed to take anything back. Every year after this, the West is poorer, hungrier, and weaker than the year before. By the middle of the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire is an empire in name only. It has lost Britain. It has lost most of Gaul. It has lost Spain. It has lost Africa and the grain. Its army is barbarian. Its emperors are puppets, raised and murdered by their generals. Its treasury is empty. It is a corpse propped upright, wearing a crown. And now, finally, we can go back to where we started. Return to Ravenna, the year 476. The boy Romulus Augustulus taking off the purple. Do you see it differently now? Odoacer did not destroy the Roman Empire that day. There was nothing left to destroy. The army had died at Adrianople 100 years before. The idea of Rome's permanence had died in the sack of 410. The wealth had died with the loss of Africa. By 476, the Western Empire was a shell, a government with no soldiers of its own, no money, no provinces worth the name, ruling little more than Italy, and ruling that only on paper. When Odoacer told a teenager to step down, he was not felling a mighty empire. He was clearing away the last piece of furniture in a house that had burned down decades earlier. That is why nobody in the room seemed to notice. That is why the Senate kept meeting, why Latin kept being spoken, why life went on. There was no great fall, because there was nothing left standing to fall. 476 was not the death of Rome. 476 was the moment someone finally admitted it was already dead. We made something for the people who see history this way, that the real turning points are almost never the ones on the plaque. If you want to carry a piece of that with you, the link is in the description. Here is what stays with you long after the dates blur. We want our catastrophes to have a date. A single day, a single battle, a villain, a moment we can point to and say, there, that is when it happened. It is comforting, in a way. If a thing falls on a particular Tuesday, then on Monday it was still fine, and we would have seen it coming. But that is not how great things die. Rome did not die because of Odoacer, or even because of Alaric. Rome died in 1,000 small decisions, made by ordinary men who thought they were just managing a problem. The officials at the Danube who saw desperate refugees and thought only of profit. The emperor who could not wait 3 days because he wanted the glory for himself. The generations who let the old army wither because raising a new one was expensive, and hiring barbarians was cheap, and the reckoning was always somebody else's problem, some other year. By the time the fall arrives, by the time the boy takes off the robe, the death is old news. It happened long ago in choices no one thought were fatal at the time. That is the warning Rome leaves us 16 centuries on. Empires, nations, anything that believes itself eternal, they do not usually end with an enemy at the gate. They end quietly, a century earlier, in the moment they stop being able to recover from their own mistakes, in the decision that seemed small, in the wound that seemed survivable. The date in the textbook is never the day it dies. The day it dies is the day it forgets how to heal. The Western Empire fell. But there was another Rome, the eastern half, ruled from Constantinople, and it did not fall. It survived Adrianople. It survived the Goths. And it would live for another 1,000 years. One of its emperors would even try to win the West back, and nearly bankrupt the world doing it. That story is next. Click it, and walk with